Everybody. Welcome, and I've got a very special guest with me today. His name is Joe White. He is a certified trainer of firewalkers, glass walkers, arrow breakers, you name it, board breakers. Totally awesome guy, super amount of energy. You're going to actually absolutely love what he's got to share with you today. And what we're going to discuss is how do you create an experience for people? I mean, a lot of people just do their craft, or if you're a coach or a consultant, you might just deliver what you're talking about, but how do you create an experience that can radically change their entire perspective on things and create transformation in their life and create a breakthrough rather than just maybe an incremental gain or something like that? So first off, thanks, Joe. I really appreciate you for being here today and for having this discussion and sharing your topic with us.
Thank you, Josh. Good to be here.
Yeah. So like I was saying, you've got a school that trains all these folks. How did you get started in this? Like, how did you get on this road and this path to accumulating all these really cool skills, to be frankly and honest?
Well, it definitely wasn't by design, and sounds more like one of those VH1 behind-the-scenes stories. But the very short version of it, 21 years ago, I'm addicted to cocaine. I'm an alcoholic. I was living up in New York City. I did some modeling up in New York. I moved from Philadelphia suburbs to New York City. I worked at a major nightclub in the VIP lounge, and while I was up there living the fast life, I became addicted to drugs, alcohol, anything and everything, cocaine, all that. And one night I was partying with my girlfriend, and we were in a loft of these Colombian drug smugglers, and I overdosed and I died. He literally turned, one of the gentlemen turned to my girlfriend at the time and goes, "Your boyfriend's blue." And she goes, "What should I do?" "Well, he can't die here. You have to drag him out. Get him out of here. I'll dial 911. So she drugged me down the hallway, out the elevator, to the front. And God bless early responders, because they were able to resuscitate me, and she sent me to St. Vincent's Hospital. Got out the next day to get high again, and that happened. And the addiction continued, my usage of drugs. Eventually, I moved back to Delaware County. I was depressed. I was on antidepressants, seeing psychiatrists, psychologists, everything, and nothing was working until one morning, flipping through the channels, 1 a.m. in the morning, I see this infomercial for this crazy guy named Tony Robbins. I thought he was the biggest idiot with the big teeth and the big hands and the jaw. I'm like, what the heck is he trying to get my money for? But I was captivated a bit, I gotta be honest. And then I got hooked. I got hooked when he said, your past does not equal your future. And for me, everything my whole life at that point was I was worthless, I was no good, I wasn't wanted as a child because I was adopted, all this backstory. And that was my first time in my life I had this revelation that maybe I could change. Maybe this wasn't I wasn't damned to be this way. Maybe I could change. But I wasn't ready to buy, so I turned off the TV, went to bed. Got up next morning, did my thing, 1 a.m. in the morning again, right? There is same infomercial, watched it, went to bed. Third night, there is something about the power of threes. Flipping the same infomercial, I was watching it, and this time I refused to sit there and watch the same infomercial over and over and over again every night. So I remember I said, I'm going to find something much more empowering to watch. I found a rerun episode of I Love Lucy or something like that, but I kept flipping back because I was fascinated. I knew it was something. And I remember the infomercial ended. I walked the 3 steps from my living room to my kitchen, and I asked myself, what if it worked? And my brain goes, but it won't work. And I said, what if it did? And I said, well, if it did, I would get off cocaine. And I didn't know about my addiction. I didn't know about what was driving it. I just thought it was just cocaine. And I remember saying, you know what, I need to buy these tapes. And I literally called that moment. I didn't want to wait till the next day and not do it. I dialed the phone number, and I got the tapes, and I started using them. And I still got my success journal. These were the cassette tapes with the little 3D Running Man going way back into, God, this is 1993. And and it took me a few months, but I got clean. And I kept listening to these tapes over and over again because it was the first time. I didn't know nothing about NLP, hypnosis, any type of change work. My idea of change work was you go into a therapist, you would talk, you feel like crap, you talk about the crap, and you leave feeling crappier. And I was like, but this was different. This was tools. I could change how I focused or what I was focusing on, or change how I felt. And I had power and actually things I could do to help me feel better. And I was able to stay clean by listening to those tapes for my first 5 years over and over and over again. Literally, I would get done one, I would get done 30 days and do it again. And just kept listening is all that I knew. So 5 years after 5 years of that, I went to WrestleMania. Kind of crazy, but a friend of mine took me to WrestleMania in Philadelphia, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock, and on the board, the message board across the way before the event began was Tony Robbins coming to Philadelphia. I'm like, really? So I went home, I caught up. It was one of his mega seminars with all, like, Donald Trump was there, other speakers, and I signed up for it. It was amazed what I did in the environment. See, listening to the tapes were good, but it was the first time I felt the environment. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. Went home, did the firewalk. So I went home, signed up for the firewalk, went to San Francisco, signed up for Mastery University. Then I did Leadership Academy. And eventually there was an opportunity. Tony was expanding his coaching business beyond in the days you have to live in San Diego to be his coach. He was expanding that. So he was having opportunity to bring people in. And I went to the initial training. And it was like 6-7 days at his old office in San Diego. I love what Tony Robbins did. I've been to every program, and I still go back to bring my staff and my team to it. But at that point, I wanted to start something of my own. I wanted to create my own environment, not sharing someone else's mission, but really create a mission that other people could be a part of. So in 1999, I had two clients, and I opened the doors to the company called Get Life Coaching.
Wow. So first off, awesome story. Like, I didn't know that. Like, we talked the other day, and you hadn't shared that amazing story of overcoming a lot of those challenges. Just awesome. And you mentioned, that creating your own mission and purpose. So what has been the direction, the mission, the purpose that you've created with Get Life Coaching?
Yeah, I believe in a thing we call E squared, or empowering environment. And an empowering environment, and this is, you hear Tony, you hear everyone say, my mom said this with every girl I dated in high school: you sleep with dogs, you wake with fleas. Who you spend time with is who you become, right? We've heard this our whole lives, but it's really true. I mean, there's a couple of things when I heard Tony Robbins talking the first time, I just remembered. One was, who you spend time with is who you become. The power of state management, the power of modeling, the power of immersion. And these things have been like corner posts for everything that we do. And I want to create an environment where I didn't have to fly to San Diego or Hawaii or wherever it was. I want to create something here, and I want to create something where people at different levels could be a part of. I didn't want to necessarily make people go through a long process to be part of a support team. And I want to create something a little bit more organic for people so they could fulfill that need of contribution, even if they did not have the entrepreneurial spirit to go out and create something on their own. And I got to be honest, it was selfish because I knew I had to have a great team around me of peers. So I just created my own. I just created my own environment that would hold me accountable and cause me to grow. So I figured I could go once in a while to San Diego or California or Hawaii or Palm Springs, or I could have it all the time around me. And I figured that made more sense to have it all the time around me.
Wow. And how has that transformed you? How has that transformed your business? And how does that show up today?
Yeah, well, I can tell you, like, from a personal standpoint, if I was coaching you and I said, you gotta wake up in your morning, do your morning ritual, the first thing I think in my head is, I'm not doing it. I gotta do it too. So it's kind of like, if I gotta be congruent with who I am and what I'm doing, that becomes the initial part of it. And the second thing I learned is, one of the things, if you want to become great at anything, you have to teach it. And I think teaching it to other team members, teaching it to other people, incorporating it that way is a huge key to integrating it into your own life. And if I look at like all my real close friends, most of them are at Get Life Coaching. I have met the love of my life, fiance, through Get Life Coaching. So everything around me is that which I love. I love doing the craft. I love helping the transformation. I look in the back of the room, the production table, and there is my fiance. There is my it was three, now it's like she's 4. My 4-month-old daughter, she's in the back. She's been to a firewalk. She's been to a 4-day seminar to help people become coaches, to train people to become coaches. She's been a 4-day program called Design Your Life. So I look around. It's everything I love is around me, and I love that experience.
Wow. Wow. And it's powerful that you create that, because, I mean, that's part of what, was the impetus for me for all these interviews was, how do you create that lifestyle? Like, how do you create not just a business that you feel chained to, but just like what you're saying, it's just like you've created an entire world where you feel empowered, where you feel excited about it, where you feel energized by it, right?
And it becomes very difficult to not stay congruent.
Yes.
It's easier when the only thing you have is when you go away, to an event, and you go crew or support, and that's all good stuff. But when it's around you 24/7,
right,
it's a lot harder to keep your head under the covers. It's a lot harder, especially when you take a teacher, leadership, mentor, some type of top level role. Then people are looking up to you. And my definition of a leader is not those who have the T-shirt or a name badge or certificate that they're a leader. It's a person that steps up in the moment, and it's about being congruent. Anyone can be a leader standing on a stage. Any idiot can be a leader. But when no one's looking, that's really where the leader is defined. And we all make mistakes. We all have challenges. We're not perfect. But we look at where our center of gravity is. And a true leader returns that center of gravity consistently, regardless of where they are and what they do, because they're not trying to be a leader, they're just being themselves.
And by virtue of being themselves and being present and being in that space, that's where the leadership comes from.
And growing and doing the uncomfortable and doing the things you don't want to do. The key between successful people, the difference between successful people and people who have challenges, is really very often the people who are not successful, their unwillingness to do the things that they don't find desirable, the uncomfortable, the less than enjoyable things. So at the gym, right, I'm a big gym fan. So at the gym, there are people who have great upper body and puny legs. So the biceps and the pecs and the triceps, they're the glamour muscles. Man, we take our shirt off the beach, that's what we're showing. But it's the legs. The legs are the key. And if you want to look really, really great, you can't do that. But there are people who leave the legs alone because it's less than comfortable, and they do the upper body, and they're way out of proportion. So we got to do the things that we don't want to do. And when you have that environment around you, it fosters that. It fosters that, and it forces you to continue to do it, because, again, I can't lead you where I'm not willing to go myself.
So how would you recommend, how do you create that? Like, how, I know your path, but if you were coaching somebody or talking with somebody, how do you give them the steps or encourage them to just begin going? Because I hear exactly what you're saying. Like I went to UPW for the first time 3 years ago, and I had a kind of a long story with getting the tapes and that kind of thing as well. And one of the biggest things that I took out of that event was your quality of life is the quality of your peer group. And I looked around like who's my peer group at the time, and it was a lot of drinking buddies that cheated on their wives, and I was like, is this who I want to grow up to be? And the answer was no. So it was like immediately I had to start changing my peer group. But how, for somebody who doesn't already have that around them, or maybe they're in a difficult circumstance, how do you give them that advice and help them take action towards it?
Well, if you're a coach, add to your team. I got to tell you, one of the biggest things that I did as a coach is hire an assistant. And I think very often I go, oh, I can't afford the payroll. You cannot not afford the payroll. Because if I have an assistant, then I have to show up on time at work. I got to do my responsibilities. If I say, I'll get you this so you can send these marketing pieces out, I have now a backdrop to push me forward and follow through there. And if that's not your situation, then bring volunteers in, create a mastermind, create a group, create a peer group around you of like-minded people and or people who want to achieve what you want to achieve, or maybe they're achieving it already. So there's like I said, there you can hire people, you can get volunteers, you can find like people to create a tribe of people together. You can do a mastermind, but at the end of the day, we have to do something and create it, because the difference is, and I see this, as you alluded to, we train people. I'm affiliated with a company, with an institute called the Firewalking Institute of Research and Education. And we just call it FIRE, that's the acronym for it. And the school was originally started by a guy named Tolly Burkan. And Tolly is the guy who taught Tony Robbins how to firewall. He taught T. Harv Eker, Annie Harrington, Dr. Wheel. If anyone has firewalked for personal development, is because of Tolly. And Tolly retired probably about 6 years, and now a gentleman named Charles Horton from Texas, he runs the institute, and I'm a master firewalk instructor. There's only about 8 of us who are active in the world, so that's something that we do. And why I bring that up is because one of the things that creates is a tribe of people of shared minds. So we have like a fire team, and these are people who love working the fires, and that's a great way to bring people together in that aspect as volunteers or helping other people. So we always got to find ways to create that environment around us. And one of the reasons why I got really involved with them, because there are some people in that institute that are very successful in a couple of different facets. And what do I want? Tony talks about the power of proximity, but I spend time. And it's interesting because some friends of mine who feel different, or they want the same thing, no, I don't have time, I can't afford to fly here, I can't do that. And again, that's the difference. Doing the unpleasant things, that's the key. And whether it's a plane ticket to hang out with someone for a week because you just want to osmosis, really learn from them, or building a group, or whatever it takes, that's how we get the results, by doing whatever it takes.
Yeah, it's a really great philosophy, and I talk with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people that want to be entrepreneurs, and that's I'll hear that. I'll say, well, I can see what, something like what you're saying, like there's an event or something that they need to do, and it's hey, if you need these skill sets, you want to be around these people, go to this event, do this thing, and it's like an excuse bath.
Yes.
Right? It's almost like, no, I can't do that. I don't have the money. I can't take vacation. I don't have the time. There's a whole series of I can'ts around that. And so what? I mean. Is it a moment? Is it a moment when you make the decision that you're going to go after that and do that? I mean, are people? What makes the difference between somebody when you branch off between being successful and being mediocre or not successful?
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the biggest, this is what coaching is, right? That's a great client for coaching. Someone who's kind of stuck from where they are to where they're here, they want to be here, and closing that gap. But I think if you really study why people don't have what they want, I think one of the two biggest things, you see this with money and success, so common. Number one, they don't believe they can get it. If you really believe you could get whatever you're trying to achieve, you will go out. That will give you the certainty. But there is no certainty. We know that. So I think people don't believe they can really get it. So they give an effort like, I'm trying, so they won't get the backlash, but at the end of the day, they're not fully committed. They're just either playing not to lose, or just doing enough not to get called out for not doing enough. And the second thing is they don't believe they're worthy of that result. On some level, consciously or subconsciously, they don't believe they're worthy of that result. And that's really just a parlay. If you don't believe you're worthy of the result, you don't believe you really can get the result, so you're not going to put yourself out there. You're not going to that point of that vulnerability that's necessary to sustain the result that you're going after.
I like that. I like that. So talk to me about this concept of core alignment and how that plays into this.
Okay. So, and when you mean by core alignment, you mean?
So when we talked before, you were talking. You're saying, you have these experiences, and you radically shift the. If you're working with a company, you would shift the core culture, the aligning with their core aspects and their values, all of that. And how does that pertain to, simply believing that you can get it and feeling that you're worthy enough to have it?
Yeah, I think we live in two worlds. We live in the world where is our day-to-day, our operational world. And then we have our authentic, our core. And very often where we live day-to-day is not aligned with like who we are with our core. So if my hand up here is where I'm day-to-day and this is my core, part of coaching is bringing that over. And we know if you're a coach, we know the reasons why. Because they associate more pain or discomfort for being where they want to be to where they're at right now. And they don't have enough pleasure associated. And we know the mechanisms of the pattern. Very often, to get someone from A to B, they need a significant emotional event, right? That's one of the ways people change. The other way is they get so satiated with pain or discomfort, they say, I got to change right now. But there's a consequence for both. There's a cost of time, money, energy, happiness. And proactivity is the greatest way to change, choosing to, sometimes with a little pain. So my whole experience is like, how can we create a change and help people to grow, to transform, to become more aligned with that as we help teach them the skills to become a coach? I think too often coaching has drifted a little bit to let me do something to you. And I love hypnosis. I'm trained in hypnosis, and it's powerful tools. One of my drawbacks of hypnosis is the fact that something is done to you and you don't know the trick to the magic show. You don't know how to duplicate it and replicate it. And yes, hypnosis is a great way to get people through problems and challenges, but I always found it a little bit more interesting to help train the people to be coaches in their own lives. Because problems are like a box of tissues. You take one, there's another one. You take another one, there's another one. So problems, is a sign of life. The only people who don't have problems are in the graveyard. We heard these things. But so problems are there for a purpose. So it sounds cool. I don't care about people's problems. I really don't. Because whatever problem they come to me with is really just the training center for them to learn the tools to handle the other problems. Yeah. Now, with that, people hold on to their problem. They hold on to where they're at. For, it meets their emotional needs. They've been conditioned there. It's a learned behavior. So I've always been drawn to things that create experiences, whether it's Disney or Apple or Ritz-Carlton, things that are kind of an end-to-end solution that you're really creating the experience. And we were talking about this. Tony Robbins is a master at what he does. And one of the things that Tony has in favor of him is the fact that he brings you on stage and there's 5,000 people cheering you on. There's lights, there's music, all of these things. Robbins does a great job of creating the experience. That's how you move 5,000 people to a transformational process, not by just the words that you say or just by showing a video. It's that whole end-to-end solution. And because I believe so much in that, I've really kind of modeled one of my favorite companies is Apple, Disney, Ritz-Carlton, these things, and I figure how can we create an experience, and this is why I love firewalking so much, or glass walking, because of the experiential element of it, but how can I create an environment that really becomes that catalyst to change? And the biggest shift that I can think of in the last 5 years for me as a coach when I stop trying to change people and I start to realize I am more of a conductor. I am more powerful when I use the elements of the room, when I use the seminar, the flow of the seminar, or I let the firewalk be the teacher, or the music, the lights, the video. All these components are a much better teacher than I am. And my job is to really be the conductor, and I conduct this symphony. And that symphony creates change. Because we know this, all change happens is self-change. No one changes you. We change because we choose to change. It's like all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. And if you can create that environment for people, that creates a stronger element for that change or transformation to occur.
So what would you tell your average coach that doesn't maybe have access to a firewalk? Certainly he can come to you and learn how to put that on. But how would you, what would you talk with them about? Like, how do they create that experience? Like, how do they still, how can they use their elements in their everyday practice without maybe having the seminar that around them?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is study success. You have to, I would go through where I start studying businesses. I became fans of where do I spend my money. I spend my money at Apple. I spend my money on Disney. I spend my money on a Ritz-Carlton or whatever the case may be. I look for businesses that excite me, businesses that do something for me. Amazon, Google, businesses that have a model that, again, that creates that end-to-end solution. So, and that would, I'll put it this way, what that does, it'll begin helping you to distinguish things that excite you, things that you like, and things that you don't like. And then I'm always trying to translate it into my world, translate it into my, in our processes of how we do things. So, for example, so here we go. I'll come back to the firewall. So I was interested in, like, the first time I did the firewall 16 years ago, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. 3,000 people going across a bed of coals. I couldn't believe I did it, right? And I always want to learn, always wanted to learn. And a friend of mine just went through the certification course, and he called me. I'm like, I don't know. It's down in Texas. It costs this much. And at that same time, I get my inspirations from the weirdest spots. Our company became very stagnant. So we stopped growing, and we got stale. I got to be honest with you. We got stale. We grew a lot, but we weren't growing out of our region. And I was watching the history. Again, I go back to wrestling, to the WWE, and it was when Vince McMahon was struggling with his company when there was was it WCW, the Nitro,
Right.
Monday Night Wars with Nitro, and he was losing everything, and he came up with an idea, and the idea was we need to bring Mike Tyson in. And he brought it around the board, and that's when Mike Tyson was at the top of his career. He was very, his Q rating was through the roof. And Vince got his board together, and everyone said, too much money, we can't afford it, it's a risk, da-da-da-da-da-da. And at the end of it, Vince goes, we'll do it. And they couldn't understand why. He said, because if we do nothing, we will lose. If we do something radical enough, we may win. We may lose, but we're going to lose unless we do something radically. And they brought Mike Tyson in, and they were on every newscast. It made big news, and that was the turning point for the WWE to not only beat WCW, but to kind of grow a lot. And I saw that. I said, that to me, that was a message. For me, I needed something to be something of a spectacle, something that gets people talking about you, something I could create an experience, an environment, generate some excitement. And it popped in my brain that the other day I was talking to my friend, and my friend told me about the firewalk, so I immediately signed up for it. And that was such an amazing moment, because that created that level of growth for us, because of everything that we're able to do with the firewalking and the other elements. And There's not a lot of people that do firewalking. That's one of the great things about it. There's not a lot of people. And if you do firewalking with Tony Robbins, it's an amazing experience with 5,000 people. But it's an amazing experience when you're able to have the intimate experience with the fire and walk more than once and really understand and have a relationship with the fire. That makes some sense?
Absolutely. It totally makes some sense. And it's not just, and it's interesting because like it goes back to what you were saying about learning to not just have it done to you, because it's almost like when you go to a UPW or you got Unleashing Power Within, where Tony's firewalking seminar, you're having it done to you in a lot of ways, and you don't really learn that, how do I do this myself? So you're then empowering people to put that skill in them where they can go out and do it on their own.
I think there's a couple of levels of coaching. Level one, to me, is where you're being coached. I think that's a necessary step because you're in unconscious incompetence. You don't even know what you don't know. So the UPW is a necessity in that step. You know, we have a program called the Ultimate Breaking Through the Barrier. That's a necessity of that step. But that only goes so far. In other words, eventually it creates a level of dependency. And if you've been to enough Tony Robbins, you see the same people sometimes. And other seminars and events that does the same thing. People keep coming back, not to grow to the next level. I mean, I've been to 5 Date with Destinies, I think. I always went back to grow, but some people kind of go back. I must have missed something.
They're there for the drug almost. It's just
yeah. And it's not just a Tony Robbins. You'll see that in our industry. A false. I definitely don't think Tony creates a sense of dependency. I know companies that do. Robbins definitely does not do that. But people kind of incur that themselves. At some point, that becomes ineffective, and then what has to happen is it has to switch from not you doing the mojo on them, and the fact that they're doing it to themselves, and you're coaching them. If not, it guarantees a level of dependency, or it'll be a law of diminished return. You'll max out, and they'll begin to drift back down. So I think that the only thing which is ethical and productive is to help train that person to be a coach in their own lives. So it's the worst marketing strategy in the world, but you want to coach people out of coming to see you.
So is that level 3 then? Is that level 3 that they're no longer?
Well, level 3 is where they take it and they coach someone else in an informal or formal situation. Because I learned this back in my days with 12-step meetings, and I'm a firm believer you can only keep what you have by giving it away. So if you want to be good at something, you have to teach it. You got to teach it, informal or formally. And then level 4 is where you take it to a community, to your church, to a company, to an organization. Much more than a one-on-one, but the one-on-many.
Yeah. I can't remember he was a world-renowned heart surgeon. I can't remember him. And when he was asked, you know, I can't remember his name, but when he was asked, like, how did you get so good? He said, easy, simple formula. He said, watch one, do one, teach one. And it's kind of just what you're talking about.
Yeah. And that, I think, as coaches, I just feel it's my job is to create that independence, not dependency.
Right. So talk to me about that. Like, what if you're creating that? And you said something that I think is a great distinction, because a lot of people talk about, you know, they want the breakthrough, and when you're, and I've experienced this in my own growth. When you start on that path, you get a huge breakthrough, right? And it's like, wow, something radical transformation in your life happens. But then either, like you were saying, you either get addicted to that and you're trying to go back and always find that. But how do you get to the point where, you're finding these incremental gains and you're more proactive with it, where you're not, because I've seen cycles, and I've done this myself, where I'll create a problem in order to have the breakthrough to the problem, rather than, growing progressively.
It kind of goes back to your point of living at your core. In my opinion, there's a difference. I was saying this we just did a firewalk certification here in Delaware, and I was telling them it was like day 3, and they start shifting from people who wanted to have people to do firewalks to like firewalk instructors. There's a difference between taking karate and being a martial artist. There's a difference of doing something and being something. And that's that path that we're on. When we first go to something, we're unconsciously incompetent. We don't even know what happened. We go to Robin's events. We get the Dickens process. Oh, my God. And you feel great, and you should. But then you go home, and you don't know how to duplicate that. You don't have the environment. You don't have the muscles. That's good, but you got to learn how to develop the muscles. The challenge is that's when the work begins. A friend of mine told me, he said, selling begins when you hear the word no.
Right. Yeah.
Everything else is transactional. It's like, you're working in the convenience store, I give you $1, get a pack of gum. That's not selling. Selling begins when you hear a no. So our self-development doesn't necessarily happen at one of my seminars or Tony Robbins. That's all great, but it really begins when you get home, when you put yourself back in a real environment. Because my seminars, Robbins seminars, they're not real environments. You're going to have 5,000 people clapping and cheering and supporting you. You're going to have people tearing you down, knocking you down, being your friend, all that kind of stuff, and that's how life is. But those environments gives us the ability to learn and grow in a hyper state. That's what immersion is, so that we can learn, so we have that stuff and that growth when we get back home. But that's where we really have to apply it. And it takes a little time to realize, oh, I can't just do it, I got to be it. You see the same thing in the exercise. People exercise to lose weight. Eventually, they start exercising because it's who I am, it's who they are.
It's an identity.
And that's when it gets conditioned to that identity.
Yeah. Yeah. You made me think of a saying. I've done the Tony Robbins crew before, and there was a saying. It's like, where does most transformation happen at a Tony Robbins event? It's in the bathroom, right? Because it's where you're removed from the environment, and you're just there long enough in a real world type setting that it hits you, it sinks in.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The real work does take place. It's that every day. It's a condition. It's a muscle. It's just coming into that place and being in that moment, and not just going through that wow moment, but actually carrying it through life.
And it's not. I think we come in with the misconceptions and expectations that it should be easy, and when it's not easy, we give it a meaning like I'm doing something wrong. But it's supposed to be challenged. I remember reading, and it was on someone's Facebook or whatever, and the point was resistance is a sign that you're going the wrong way. I'm like, garbage. Resistance is a sign it's working. Now, you don't want to be the fly next, bouncing against the window, which is like 6 inches from where the window's open. You don't want to be the insane fly. But resistance, I go to the gym. The only way I grow my muscles is to put more and more and more resistance on the muscles. So resistance is a sign of growth. It hurts. It doesn't feel good. It's unpleasant. It's not comfortable. But all of that is signs that it's working. So some of it is the meaning, and we've got to match our expectations and match the meaning that we give it. Again, very often we're so afraid to fail. We're so afraid we're not going to get it or it's going to go away. We end up saying, oh my God, look, if you were an exterminator for 20 years and you retired, don't you think you're going to walk into someone's house and look for rat droppings or mice droppings or something? Because you're so wired. You're right. So wired. So somewhere along the way, we start to believe that growth is the absence of the old pattern. See, if I'm really growing or if I'm really transformed, I'm not going to do the old pattern. I think that's an inaccurate measurement stick. It's great if we can totally, abolish that pattern, but I think a better measuring stick is, do we go back to it as often? Do we go back into it as deep? And when we're there, do we stay there as long?
Well, and having awareness.
What's
right?
that?
And having awareness that I am doing the pattern to begin with.
Well, that you're doing, yeah. Awareness is always, but it's the awareness plus the understanding. Am I going there as often?
Hmm.
Because if you used to go there every day and you go there every other day, that's progress. Do
Right.
you go there as deep? Maybe you still feel angry, but it was a 10, now it's a 7. And do you stay there as long? That's a true measurement of whether true indicators of change, not the absence of the pattern, but do you stay there as long, go there as often, go there as deep? And I don't think they have these mixed expectations, like, oh my God, what am I doing? I felt so good. I thought I was going to get rid of everything because I yelled it out. I had the breakthrough. I did the Dickens. Yeah, what it did was separate it from your identity, but you still got to deal with the habitual pattern side of things.
Right. Right. It's a challenge, right? It's you got to grow through that every step of the way. I find it interesting. We were talking about resistance. I've encountered this where every time I'm trying to grow my business and I'm trying to do something online, and I always run into technical problems. It's like every time I'm trying to I know when I'm pushing to another level because just everything breaks. Like randomly websites go down and my site goes down and Aweber goes down, and it's like how can this all happen at the same time every time I'm pushing? I find that interesting.
You say always.
um, I wouldn't say it's always. You're right. You're right. It's not always, but definitely when I guess when I get in the mode, this latest push when I was doing a lot of web work and I was putting stuff together, and suddenly lots of stuff just started going and it's happened to me before. I guess always probably isn't the greatest description,
So if
but
I was coaching you, even though I'm not,
okay,
I would have you examine the meaning you're giving the event.
right,
Because events are meaningless organically. In other words, events don't assign their own meaning. We assign the meaning to the event.
right.
And whatever meaning we assign is going to rapidly change how we respond to it and what we feel about it and the ultimate result. So it comes down to the meaning that we're giving the event that really translate to how we feel, and then again, how we feel translate into what we do or what we don't do or how well we do, and ultimately that filters down to the point of the results that we get.
So what would a empowered, successful meaning be for when you encounter that resistance?
Well, maybe it's a sign that you're pushing forward. Maybe it's a sign that the world's not conspiring against you. Maybe sometimes it's the understanding that crap breaks down. And it's not against you. It's not a sign. It just means sometimes things just don't work. Maybe it's a sign that you have to work on your inner state of how you're responding to something. I just went through a challenge at something that just came up 3, 4, 5 days in my head. I want to get upset. I want to act this way. And I remember I pulled myself out. I said, I'm giving this way too much attention. Remember, whatever you throw fuel on will burn. So if you throw fuel on something, it's going to continue to burn. You're feeding it. Whatever you feed will grow. Whatever you starve will die. And that works in opposition of each other, right? When you feed something, the other side dies. So I began feeling this angst. I said, wait a minute. I said, as I started deconstructing what I was feeling, and I said, if anything, this is an opportunity because not everything's going to go your way. Not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to approve of you for whatever reason. Why am I giving this so much credence? So I started pulling that apart. And I start realizing, if anything, this is an opportunity for me to grow of how I handle stimulus and challenges when they show up in my life.
Hmm.
But if I can't handle this situation, I will not handle, when I write my book and someone criticizes it and says, this is a bunch of pop psychology monkey crap. I'll melt. So maybe this is teaching you something for a lesson in your life that you need to learn that's coming down the road in the next leg of that road.
Yeah. No, I can see that be really incredibly powerful. I love that. I mean, it's so key to just apply that every single day.
Yeah.
Um, and thank you, Joe. I mean, you've given an amazing amount, and dude, your energy is awesome. No, it's like I'm usually I've got to come down. This one I'm gonna like, okay, I got to come up because you're up here, man. You're rocking it. Um, how talk to me about the certification process. Like, how can people get to know what it is that you do more and find out more about what it is that you do and provide?
Okay, so if you want interest, like and if you're just curious about my company, the website is getlifecoaching.com. One of the good advantages of starting this company 15 years ago is that there weren't so many websites and coaches out there, and no one even knew what a life coach was. So we stumbled across a pretty name that has some ability to be remembered and has some
Yeah, that's a $10,000 URL today.
Yeah. Um, the other side of it is our association with firewalking.com. And again, that is the Firewalk Institute of Research and Education. And I love this organization. And again, it's my environment. These are some of my closest friends here. This is like my tribe away from my tribe. And I'm like I said, I've trained people to be firewalk instructors in this country, in Hawaii, in Spain. So it's very much of a global movement, and it's powerful for coaches and instructors and trainers because very often we're looking for something to create a powerful enough metaphor so that the person can have that breakthrough. And I did board breaking for years, and I love board breaking. But I got to tell you, firewalking is so powerful because it's visceral, it's alive. You feel the heat. When people come down the hill, yeah, and they see it like, oh my God,
Yeah.
the coals are really red. Like, what did you expect? Well, I thought you just painted them red. It's crazy. So it gets people in some very interesting states. And because it's so, we know, Tony talks about the 3 ways that we grow in our life. Repetition, right? Emotional intensity, and doing something unique. The 3 ways we set any NLPers out there, the way we set an anchor or condition something. Repetition, emotional intensity, or uniqueness. Well, you don't need to walk over fire 5,000 times because it is such an intense experience. And it's so unique. Everyone remembers their first fire walk. Everybody. So it creates that indelible experience in them, and it's such a powerful metaphor. And then part of this course, this certification, is also learning how to do other elements like glass walking, where you walk barefoot on glass, which is great because you take it in a suitcase and do it anywhere. I've been on Fox Morning Show. I've been written up in newspapers. I did a local TV show around our area where we did live glass walk in the studio demonstration. It's the cracking of the glass. That's a powerful metaphor. Board breaking, cinder block breaking, snapping arrows with the point against your throat and the other side, the feather part, against the wall, bending steel rebar with your throat. These are powerful tools that really challenge people to step up and to do, and because that creates a great opportunity and space for them to have that breakthrough. So that as a coach and trainer, it's doubled my business. It's done so much for everything that we're trying to do. We are larger, more well-known. When we do a fire walk, anyone who's in our local area, all it is picture the fire walkers. So we create a lot of organic interest with it. But the other side of it is it's so much easier to market my company because, like I said earlier, it's if you have if you're soliciting a press release to a newspaper to come out and cover an event, and you're out saying, well, we help people change their lives, we do strategic intervention, it may get them out there. But if you're saying, and they're going to be walking across 1,200 degrees, they thinking, my God, people can get burned, this is good. So it helps distinguish. If you ever read Seth Godin, everyone reads Seth Godin, Purple Cow. Seth is an amazing marketeer. Purple Cow revolutionized our business. That was a purple cow. Is something which is extraordinary that every other coach in your area does not have. And now you stand out from everyone else because you can offer these elements on a small scale, on a large scale, to help create change and to get people talking about you. Again, it's P.T. Barnum-ish, it's Vince McMahon-ish, but it is powerful because people, every time I post a Facebook picture, everyone has an opinion. It's stupid. It's amazing. I've always wanted to do it. I did it with Tony. It always elicits a response every single time. I'd rather have them talking about me than not talking about me at all.
Right. I've noticed that just from the traffic, because I took a photo from one of your videos, and it's just the fire burning, and I put that on the Facebook event, and it's getting shared, it's getting likes and clicks, and it's like it's just powerful. It's just that fire speaks to us in a lot of ways.
Well, and that's all like the surface part of fire walking, and then you really get into the relationship with the fire and the spiritual aspect and really connecting with the element. And I've walked hundreds and hundreds of times, and every fire walk is different. And sometimes it's a 40-foot fire walk. Sometimes it's doing fire standing, where you stand on the bed of coals, the advanced fire walking technique, so to say. But all these things, is all about that not just pushing yourself, but learning how to connect with an element. Like I tell you, if you respect it, you'll be fine. And I've been at places where I'll walk one more time, and I should not have walked one more time. It was more about ego, and I got kissed.
Yeah.
So the fire is a great, great teacher. And we also have this policy, if you came to one of my fire walks, you would be eligible for a fire team. So it's a great way to keep people involved and to kind of build. I use it to a lot of people who are kind of a little bit more isolated in the world. I'll talk them into being part of our fire team. And that's a great way for them to be around other like-minded people. They get some self-confidence. They're doing something for other people. And I use that a lot to kind of reel people who are on the outskirts, who've been to programs but aren't applying it yet, or might drift back too far, to kind of give them that second place for them to come to, where they can feel loved and wanted and contributing to other people.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Well, thank you, Joe. All the stuff that you've talked about is just amazing, and I'm definitely gonna have to check out when are you guys doing your next event? Do you have an event planned now when you're gonna do the certification training?
Yeah. Well, if you have any questions, right, you can either go to firewalking.com or just email me directly at joe@getlifecoaching.com. Find me on Facebook, right? But email me probably the easiest way. We have we call them FITs. Firewalk Instructor Trainings. We have them. We have another one coming up in Delaware in September, one in Dallas in October, December in California. We're not sure location. Actually, I'm hosting and speaking Bonfire Heights. It's in the northern part of California. That is in the fall. We have one in South Africa. We have another one in the UK. We have one in Spain.
Wow.
So this is a global movement. So no matter where you're at, there's probably a firewalk instruction kind of, we get international people that go to these different events. And then we have an advanced firewalking training, the next level up, in Hawaii every year. So we do some really cool things. So no matter where, and we also do a certification there, just at first level, that FIT training. So in the next 12 months, no matter where you live, if there's something that interests you, we have something somewhat closer to you than probably not.
Wow, really cool, Joe. I appreciate it. And what I'll do is, so this video will upload to YouTube after this, and I will take those links that you mentioned, and put them in the description so people can click on that and go to your site. But awesome stuff. I've taken like 3-4 pages of notes because you just had so much content and so much amazing heart and contribution to what you do, and I greatly appreciate that. Is there anything parting or inspirational you'd like to share with anybody?
Sure. I think very often, especially if you look at like the RMT circles, you have a lot of coaches with some really good skills and really good and huge amount of heart, huge amount of heart. They're just having a hard time getting their businesses out there. And a lot, it's more about that. It's yes, it's marketing, a strategy, it's money, it's these things, but it's more about that fear of putting yourself out there because it's your baby. It's the very thing that you love the most. This is your creation. We are alchemists. We create something out of nothing. And when we do that, we sometimes become overprotective or fearful that if I put it out there, what if I get rejected? What if I get hurt? Well, I'll end this way. When I was growing up, we had these plates that we always ate off of. You know, these ugly green plates where some guys pushing a wheelbarrow down this cobblestone. And in the china cabinet, we had these really cool, like glass coffee cups you could see through. They were translucent plates with gold trim on them. And we only ate off that on Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner. At one point, I said, Mom, why don't we eat off the good china more often? I'm tired of looking at this guy pushing the wheelbarrow down the street. And my mom goes, no, 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 no. That's only for special occasion. We don't want to chip it. We're going to get chipped. We're going to get knocked down. You're going to get challenged. You're going to open your mouth and have no idea what to say. You're going to bomb. You're going to fail. You're going to make the wrong business deal. You're going to go right when you should have went left. Everyone, anyone who's been successful has been there. Our heart is our greatest resource. That's what drives my passion, just my heart to help and make a change and create something here. And we cannot allow that fear or that the thought that maybe we're not going to be able to achieve what we want to achieve or not be able to help the people that we want to help interfere. It is better to put yourself out there and learn and realize that it is the hesitation that destroys momentum. Hesitation destroys momentum. In other words, once we stop, once we walk up to that fire lane and then we stop, that's when it becomes very difficult because now we're playing in our head the 6,000 things that can go wrong. It's better to go through it because I guarantee it, nothing is worse. Very rarely, put it that way, is it what you experience is nowhere near as bad as what's going through in your head. Most of the time, firewalking or starting your own business or putting yourself out there or doing your first seminar or getting your first client, you know, people got all this angst, all this hesitation. At the end of it, they say, that wasn't that bad. That was pretty good. So avoid that hesitation. Focus on taking the first step. This is what I learned from firewalking. People go, how can I take 10 steps across a fire? You don't have to take 10. Just take one. You step on the fire. Trust me, you'll know what to do. You'll keep walking. You won't stop. It's the same thing here. You got to take that first step. That's the key. Lead with your heart. Lead with the love. Lead with that passion. Take that first step. You might get knocked around a little bit, but you'll get to the other side, and you'll be stronger. I guarantee it.
Wow. Wow. That is incredibly powerful right there. I love it. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you and greatly appreciate getting to know you and having a couple of conversations with you in this one. And I certainly hope this is not our last one by any means.
Anytime.
Yeah, no, I think you created something amazingly valuable for people, and it has a processional effect, right? So the people that you teach are going to impact others, and that's powerful. That's really truly powerful. So stick around a little bit. I think we're going to end the broadcast for now, but I just want to say thanks again. It was really amazing, just all that you shared.
Thank you, Josh.
So cool. All right. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.